All right, so I'm not nearly as good at this as I want to be, but let's see if we can make it just a little bit better today. The whole purpose of this particular episode really probably should be credited to Cameron Haynes, because I watch a lot of his content. If you don't know who he is, he's an incredible bow hunter, an incredible athlete, and a really positive role model in the world right now. And I just soak up his content as often as I can. And I was watching one of his podcasts, and he was talking with his guest about this desire to pursue balance. And it's a really common thing that you see talked about or hear talked about in the podcast world and the self-help world about pursue balance, make sure your life is in balance. And Cameron went on to talk about how really pursuing balance can be an unhealthy way to pursue life. And that rooster is probably gonna do that the whole morning. Whatever. Cameron is talking about how balance, pursuing balance, can become a very unhealthy way to pursue life and to live life. And I thought, well, if it's not balanced, then what is it? And you know, he and his guest went on to talk about other things and didn't answer that question for me, which made me sit down at my desk and go, okay, well, if it's not balanced, then what is it? Okay, so if it's not balance, if the pursuit of balance doesn't lead to a well-lived life, then what is it? And I spent a lot of time thinking about that, because you know, the problem with balance, and this is the point that Cameron Haynes made, balance means, well, I went and ran for 30 minutes, now I can eat an extra 400 calories of ice cream, because that's balanced. Or you might think of it as, you know, I've done all this, I've spent an hour doing this, now I gotta make sure I spend an hour doing that, and then I gotta spend an hour over there doing this thing, and I gotta spend an hour, and it leads to this constant pursuit of, I have to make sure that all of the things in my life are being done in a way that produces balance. You know, the scales are even at the end of the day. And anybody who works a job, has a family, has kids, has pursuits, has goals, knows that it is nigh on impossible to be balanced in your everyday life. And so I started to think about that and looking and reflecting on my own life, and if it's not balanced, then what is it? And I think the answer is harmony. Now, for all of my musically inclined people, all of my music teachers and my musicians and all my friends out there that are doing incredible things with instruments and vocal talents and all of that, you're gonna understand this better than I am, because I like the idea of how to make music just wrecks my brain. I don't even understand how y'all do it. But what I do understand about harmony is that in a musical piece, in a composition, you have some notes that are played really high, and some notes that are played often, and some notes that are not played very much, or they're kind of the tones that float through the background of the music. You know, I think of like Beethoven or Bach or any of those pieces where you have instruments in the front that are wholesale driving the action of the music, and then you have other parts that are playing gently in the background to add to the overall experience. You know, and as a painter and as an artist, the same thing happens on canvas or on paper. You have some colors that are just, you know, like right now, everything for me is autumn colored, man. I love oranges and browns, and you see them accented beautifully with some cool blues that kind of play softly in the background of your composition. That's harmony. That is a harmonic life, right? It's this idea that not all of my stuff has to be in the foreground. Not all of my life has to be the brass instruments playing at 100, whatever musical term you want to. I'm sorry, musicians. I apologize. But the point is that there are going to be things in your life that are the foreground. They drive the whole big picture of the narrative of your life. But at the same time, you have these other things that you're doing that add sweetness or melody, and they play gently in the background of your life. And I think where we get into problems in our everyday living is that we try to make all of the things happen in our life as if they were the main thing. And I think that's where we get out of harmony. That's where our lives are no longer harmonic. The pieces aren't all playing beautifully together. They aren't all working in a way that makes the whole of our life melodic and beautiful. But then, like, how do you get to that place? How do you get to that place? And that's where I think a lot. That's where I spent a lot of my thoughts this week is, well, if I'm out of harmony, how do I get into a harmonic place? Some of you already know what I'm going to tell you. Like, you need to get some paper and a pen and do some writing. I mean, writing is the best way ever to sort out these things, because in order to figure out how to make your life a beautiful harmony, you're gonna have to sort some stuff out, and that's hard to do without putting it on paper. And putting it on paper, by the way, is better than doing it on a phone or a computer. So get some paper. But what you're gonna have to figure out, what you're gonna have to do is look at your life and go, okay, I've got a bunch of independent components, and I need to make all these individual pieces create the right notes and the right colors so that my life is in harmony. And you gotta figure out what are the necessary, what are the non-optional pieces of this composition that we call life. Is it family? Is it religion? Is it faith? Is it physical exercise, nutrition? Is it time outside? Like, what are the things that are non-negotiable for you? You know, it's the vase with the rocks and the sand. What are the non-negotiable parts of your composition? You know, as musicians, you know that there are certain instruments that you have to have in order to make a piece of music work. So what are those? For me as a painter, when I look at a piece of landscape that I want to paint, I know that for me, the non-negotiable is going to be trees and water. If those, I don't know why that's three. Trees and water. I don't know what the third one is. I can't remember right now. But for me, at least those two things are non-negotiable, trees and water. Because the way I feel when I look at a piece that has trees and water in it, everything about it is right. So for the composition of your life, what are the non-negotiables? For me, it's family. If my time spent with family is not one of the loudest pieces or the loudest instruments in my harmonic way of living, then I'm not doing it right. Faith, obviously, is a big part of that for me. If I'm not spending the time investing in those parts of my spirit, then I'm not the whole person that I want to be. So you gotta sit down, you gotta figure out, what are the pieces of my life that I know have to be there in order for the harmony to sound as sweet as I want it to sound? What are the pieces that need to be more of background pieces? Physical training for me is a non-negotiable. However, it is not in the foreground of my composition. If I put too much of my time into physical training, usually what happens is my art suffers, my faith suffers. Something in there loses out on the amount of time that is needed. So if you want to live a life that is enjoyable, I'm going to make the argument that you have to find harmony. Stop looking for balance. Yo, there is a butterfly. I'm literally filming this with a butterfly on my kneecap. If you want to live a life that's enjoyable, you have to have harmony, not balance. Balance is a forever elusive chase that you're never going to get to. But harmony is achievable because harmony recognizes that some things will play loudly, some things will play softly in the background, and some things will be in the middle. And sometimes the things that are in the foreground that play loudly go back to the background for a little bit. Some things that play in the background become foreground driving instrumental notes. But it's worth investigating. Because a life well lived is harmonic. I 100% believe that. So if you're feeling out of order, if you're feeling a dis-ease in your life, goodbye butterfly, then it's worth sitting down with a pen and paper and figuring out where has the harmony gone off the rails. Where is it that in your day-to-day activities you need to find more space for things that nourish your soul? And if you want to live life well, maybe you need to recompose some things. Maybe you need to put some things in the foreground that should have been there a long time ago. Maybe you need to wholesale get rid of some things that shouldn't even be in your composition so that you have space and time for the beautiful notes that compose your life. And I think that's worth spending some time on. I'm gonna go do that.